Are you going to be one of the 10,000 aircraft flying into Oshkosh for 2024 AirVenture? Whether you're going or not, you can take advantage of Flight Insight's Oshkosh sale at the link here or in the description to save 20% on all courses and bundles this week. With all those flights and 600,000 attendees, it's not your typical cross-country. Think of this like it's your entire home state driving to the biggest game of the college football season and everyone has to file in and park at the stadium. Only now replace the cars with airplanes and you get an idea of the logistics involved. EAA puts out a notice for each year's show, sometimes called the Oshkosh NOTAM, for aircraft flying in and departing. We'll take you through an example flight to highlight the procedures and what you might expect flying in, but it's absolutely imperative that you read the notice if you're flying into Oshkosh or one of the surrounding airports. It's on the EAA website or just Google something like Oshkosh NOTAM or notice. There are changes to it each year, which are highlighted right on page 1. This year, they're mentioning a TFR to the southeast of Oshkosh around Milwaukee for a political conference. That's in effect until Thursday the 18th, so at the time this video goes live, it'll already be over. There's also a TFR there for the Milwaukee Air and Water Show from the 25th to the 28th. Check those NOTAMs for details. There's a new Fisk holding procedure on page 9. In addition to the VFR holds we'll highlight later, ATC has a new procedure highlighted in bold to kind of kick out aircraft from the VFR arrival over the town of Fisk and send them back westbound north of the lakes to begin the inbound progression again. Finally, on Thursday the 25th, there'll be no arrivals on the Fisk route prior to 8 a.m. local time. So this is a further restriction than the general prohibition on arrivals each morning up until 7 a.m. The Oshkosh notice details Fisk arrivals, Warbird arrivals, and IFR procedures, but in our example flight, we're going to focus on the Fisk arrival, which the vast majority of aircraft are going to be doing this week. On our example flight, we've left College Park, Maryland, and landed in DuPage, west of Chicago, for our final fuel stop. Fuel management is critical on the Oshkosh flight. You can expect to join a conga line of arriving aircraft up to 50 miles from the field, and holds and diversions are commonly assigned due to overcrowding. Make sure you got plenty of fuel to accommodate. We're departing runway 20 right from DuPage and climbing to 3,500 feet. We'll use the Chicago flyway chart to navigate out from under the Bravo shelf. This route keeps us below the Bravo, which starts at 4,000 here, and it's for good reason. Westbound departures from O'Hare will be holding 4,000, so we want to give them room. Now, this is what a direct shot looks like from DuPage to Oshkosh. But there will be a VFR transition which begins somewhere west of the field and funnels all arrivals into the airport. We'll talk more about these transitions in a bit, but they start out here to the west. So from the north end of the Chicago Bravo, we're going to be navigating much closer to Madison's Class Charlie. The EAA notice shows us preferred transitions around busy airports. Here's the one for Madison. We'll use the transition east of the airport here, taking us over the town of Columbus, Wisconsin. It's very unlikely that you'll be able to get flight following for most of this route due to the high traffic volume, but you can monitor Madison approach on the frequency here. This will be a great way to build situational awareness for the arrival, as most of the aircraft on frequency will be Oshkosh bound. The notice recommends receiving the Oshkosh ATIS on 125.9 within 60 miles of the airport, which is about where we are over the town of Columbus. Besides weather and landing information, we'll also be able to hear the transition in use at the time, though of course this is subject to change by ATC. You should also switch over to Fisk approach as you approach Columbus. It's on 120.7. They'll periodically mention the transition in use and runways for landing. Here's a snippet of what that sounds like.
Oshkosh, arriving runway 27, become familiar with the procedure in the NOTAM. We are starting at Puckaway Lake. Puckaway Lake is the starting point. Takes you directly over those railroad tracks, 1,800, 1 mile spacing, 1 mile spacing. You get any closer than that, we're going to start pulling you out. So 1 mile spacing. 1,800, 1,800, and 90 knots directly over those railroad tracks. Aircraft inbound to Oshkosh, arriving runways 27 and 36. Become familiar with the procedures in the NOTAM. The starting point is Puckaway Lake. Puckaway Lake is the starting point of your transition, 1 mile.
So on this broadcast, they've mentioned Puckaway Lake as the transition point. This is the second furthest away on the procedure. They also mentioned that the altitude should be 1,800 and the speed 90 knots, and that separation with the aircraft in front of you should be no closer than 1 mile. All these stipulations are listed in the notice as well, though be advised that this year's separation requirement lists 1/2 mile, not 1 mile. But of course, this can be adjusted by ATC anytime. Also, faster aircraft can make the transition at 135 knots if 90 knots is too slow to fly safely. Coming across the east side of Madison like we did, we could proceed to any transition from over the town of Columbus. The recording mentioned Puckaway Lake as the transition, but let's do it from Endeavor Bridge to see the whole procedure. You'll notice there are VFR waypoints for each of the 4 transition points, but it's stressed in the notice, and ATC will mention too, that you shouldn't rely on GPS for navigation, but should visually follow the railroad track and lake shore as appropriate. We'll be following aircraft visually, and as we approach the transition point, Endeavor Bridge, we should find an aircraft that we could slide in behind. The bridge itself doesn't show up in the sim, but it carries a railroad across this reservoir. We want to turn and begin following the railroad. Notice that at no time have we checked in with Fisk approach. It's important to keep our radio communications to an absolute minimum, besides emergencies and other matters. Fisk approach will be tracking the whole conga line visually from the tower, and likely with ADS-B as well. Everyone is doing the same thing, so there's no need to announce intentions, just follow procedures. Now that we've joined the line and are following the railroad, the fun begins. We're monitoring Fisk approach, which will be non-stop with controller instructions. Listen up for your own situational awareness, as there are bound to be a few twists along the way. You'll also need to manage speed and altitude. 90 knots is slow for our Cirrus, so we have some flaps out and our throttle back. And of course there'll be an aircraft in front of us that we want to follow and not get too close to, so as not to create a concertina effect with other aircraft in line behind us. When we're over the town of Ripon, we're going to find the railroad on the northeast end of town. We're going to follow that to the town of Fisk. As we approach Fisk, the controllers will identify us visually by color and type aircraft or low wing, high wing, asking us to rock our wings to acknowledge. When we hear our plane, we're going to rock our wings and do as instructed.
Turn right, fly eastbound over Fisk Avenue. 1,800, you're going to enter the left base for runway 36. My Cherokee type, go and start that right turn now for that Cherokee type. Nice job. You're going to monitor tower on 126.6. Have a nice day. MI half mile southwest of Fisk, rock your wings. Oh, that's a wonderful rock. I'm going to have you continue northeastbound straight ahead along those railroad tracks, 1,800. You're going to enter that right downwind for runway 27 inside that gravel pit. You're going to monitor tower on 118.5. Welcome to Oshkosh.
So we're told to follow the railroad tracks for a right downwind for runway 27. The other option would have been to make a right turn at Fisk following the road to go to runway 36. It's likely that both runways will be in use at once, so keep a sharp listen. Also, departures may be happening on a separate frequency, so there'll be other aircraft you don't hear on the radio. Fisk approach will tell us to monitor tower, at which point we could switch over. They'll give us the frequency, but for the north side for runway 27, it's 118.5. We should start our descent at midfield, and then tower will announce our landing clearance, including where on the runway we should touch down. There are 3 colored dots on runway 27, orange, green, and white. Multiple aircraft will be cleared to land on the same runway, and the dots help separate aircraft on different segments of the runway.
Detail rolling down the runway, nice job there, and left turn off into the grass when you can do it. Welcome to the show. As soon as you can make that turn, that'd be great. They got traffic waiting to go behind you. Cessna turn base.
We'll be cleared to the green dot, which doesn't appear on the sim, but is right where the beginning of runway 13 intersects. It gives us 3,100 feet of available runway. We obviously don't need to hit the dot exactly, it's not a spot landing contest, it's just a way to separate aircraft. On landing, we should roll off, and rather than contacting ground or anyone, be on the lookout for EAA marshalers. We'll have a homemade sign out the left-hand side of the aircraft showing them what our plans are, and we'll use General Aviation Parking, GAP. Sometimes it just gets too busy to continue aircraft inbound, and ATC will assign VFR holds. The holds will be based on where you are in the transition and typically involve circumnavigating one of the lakes counterclockwise. There are procedures for departing the hold as well. Have a great time flying into Oshkosh. It's part of the fun of the event, but it'll really test your nerves. Be prepared for the unexpected. Aircraft not following procedures, not listening to the radio, getting disabled, controllers getting flustered, over congestion. These are all things that happen every year. Have a diversion airport planned just in case. There's public transport to Oshkosh from many of the airports in this part of the state. Don't clog up the Fisk approach and Oshkosh Tower frequencies with any unnecessary comms. Only use it for emergencies or if you have to go around. And by all means, please read the EAA notice in full before setting off. This video is no replacement for being familiar with the full notice. We've highlighted some items in it, but there are more details within. Bring plenty of fuel, and consider having a friend or two along to help with spotting aircraft. Let us know how you did, and look out for another video covering Oshkosh departures.